we have with us a debut guest, Jim Willie. He's also known as the Golden Jackass, and that's going to make sense here in a minute. He's an insightful, forward-thinking writer and analyst of today's events, the economy, and markets. In 2004, he launched the popular website goldenjackass.com that offers his articles of original, out-of-the-box thinking, as well as content from top analysts and authors. He also has a popular and affordable subscription-based newsletter, the Hat Trick Letter, which we have here, and we're going to talk more about that later.
I love that, by the way. The
name? The newsletter?
No, the newsletter content. Oh, man, folks, subscribe. Just subscribe. You'll learn so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have with us guest Jim Willie, and we're going to talk about a number of things. Petrodollar, U.S. economy, what's going on, what we expect to see in the future, the markets, and everything in between. Mr. Willie, welcome to the Hagman Report.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be on.
Well, it's great to have you. I know we had several of our listeners who said, hey, you have not had Jim Willie on. You got to get this guy on. And got in touch
Jim,
with him.
we were actually threatened, all right? To tell you the truth, all right, there was a hostage scene. It was ugly, so we had to acquiesce and have you on. I'm kidding, but no.
It would be the other way around. The Department of Treasury would threaten you not to have me on.
I'll tell you what, judging from your, and you can go ahead and explain that. Some of the stuff I've been reading from you, very interesting, very disconcerting as well. But you've got like solutions. I love how everything's all presented. Well, I'm not going to take your time up, Jim. The Hat Trick Letter, investment strategy. It was interesting. I just want to say this. It was originally threefold: discovery of minerals, resources, gold, silver, copper, gas, and such. Price rise for those commodities, Canadian dollar appreciation. That was the Hat Trick Letter investment strategy, hence the Hat Trick 3. You get it. And then, of course, it moved on from there. But, sir, where do you want to start? Where's a good, and I know people hate when I ask that question, but in your mind, where's a good place given the news of the day, the financial situation of the day, geoeconomic, geopolitical? Where do you want to start?
The progress in the dismantling of the petrodollar monopoly, the cracks in the U.S. Treasury bond market, which are two sides of the same coin, and as that gets resolved following a crisis, the United States will never be the same. We're going to lose our global currency reserve privilege, which we abuse incredibly. We ship in on imports finished products, and we ship out fraudulent, toxic treasury bonds, which we print like Zimbabwe and South American dictatorships. But it's all good because the Fed says so. It's not all good. It's leading to a very big problem. And we're at the point now of debt saturation and what I call the systemic Lehman event. We had a Lehman failure. It was actually a murder scene, a crime scene. They call it a failure. But, yeah, when you put a bag over a guy's head, you can say he died of natural causes, but those who witnessed it know that he suffocated from the bag over his head that stopped all breathing processes. We didn't fix anything after Lehman. We just expanded that whole subprime policy with all the sovereign bonds, treasury bonds, euro bonds, UK gilts, Japanese government bonds, primarily euro bonds and treasury bonds. We're printing money and recovering them. There's a big question going on right now. Will the U.S. Department of Treasury suffer auction defaults, auction failures? And I say no, they got free money to bid on any auction at all. And it's an unlimited check because we're printing money like Zimbabwe and the South American dictatorships. So we're not going to have an auction. We're just going to have a global rejection of the dollar. I know that sounds funny. People say, well, gee, Jim, are you aware the dollar's going up? Yeah, and I asked them, "Are you aware why?" It's really quite funny anymore. The ignorance. People say the dollar's going up, and I say, "Yeah, do you know why?" And they say the stock market's going up, and I say, "Yeah, do you know why?" They don't know why.
I don't. Okay, I'm not sure I know why.
Why is the dollar going up?
Yeah. Well, why is everything going up?
The dollar's going up for many reasons. Here are some of the principal ones. We're printing money, monetizing our $1.2, $1.4 trillion federal debt, federal deficit. It has to be financed. The rollovers have to be financed. The refundings have to be financed. We're doing it all with printed money. Okay, that's a problem. Other countries can't do that because they don't have the privilege of the global currency reserve. So other countries see rising interest rate unless some, prince on a white horse in Europe named Draghi is bidding on the Italian government bonds. Why is the Italian government bond not at 10%? Because the Euro Central Bank is buying it. Okay, so the euro and the dollar are dominant because our central banks are buying them with funny money. Other countries can't do that. Emerging market nations like, let's say Sri Lanka or India, they're having problems with their debt. Their currencies are losing ground. I don't want to get to the crisis areas like Turkey. That's a different story altogether. Venezuela, a different story altogether. Their currencies are in trouble for different reasons. But many countries across the world are seeing their currency decline because they cannot manage the financing of their deficits. We do by printing money, like Zimbabwe and the South American dictatorships. So their countries have suffered economic damage, not ours, from the currency problem. But the United States is suffering from a different problem. The currency is so high that we can't export successfully, nor do we have much to export. So our trade deficit is going out of control. It's going to be over $600 billion this year. That's just sickening. So why is the stock market different story, different question? Why is the stock market going up? People say to me, Jim, you don't understand. The stock market's going up. Things are good. Conditions are good. Everything's fine. What's wrong with you? And I said, do you know why it's going up? They say no. Well, more people are buying than selling. I said, do you know who's buying? Corporations are issuing corporate bonds, taking the money, not investing in their native industries, not investing in expanded business segments, but instead padding their executive stock options, compensation packages, and buying their own stock. General Electric's going to be the first victim of this practice. They issued a lot of bonds, got cheap interest rate, used it to buy their stock. It's puffed up, and they're now having some problems in rolling over some of their corporate bonds from the past. Well, they can't do this forever. It's a Ponzi, self-administered scheme. Who are the biggest buyers of stocks these days? The Federal Reserve in violation of their charter, and the Wall Street banks who have no business doing this, but they're doing it with free money from the Fed. That's why the stock market's going up. That's why the dollar's going up. And it's not healthy. It's aberrant. It's grotesque, and it's a distortion. And it just can't last forever. I mean, they got a saying that trees don't grow to the sky, and you can't build a tower to the sky. Well, eventually, if you have a high enough tree or a high enough tower, the winds will knock it down. The instability from natural events will knock it down. And that's what's coming. But in the U.S. case here, we've just abused the petrodollar and the monopoly for too long. If countries wanted to buy oil in the last 30 years, they collect their treasury bills, and they buy the crude oil on a tanker, and they pay for it with dollars. Well, that's changing. Shanghai, little awareness to the U.S. public. Shanghai now has an oil contract paid in RMB, the renminbi. I prefer using that term to the Chinese yuan. But the Chinese have a contract now for futures purchases, which means a buyer can arrange for a September purchase of oil and fix the price, reduce the risk, keep things stable from the whole forward cost standpoint and management, fix it, small fee, and pay for it in RMB. Now, I expect the Saudis to do that pretty soon. They're a little bit late in announcing. I think they're doing it already. They just don't want to get terrorism events compliment of Langley. When I use the term Langley, I hope your listeners understand. Langley is the CIA. They're located with their main office in Langley, Virginia. I've actually had a couple clients say to me, Jim, what's Langley? You keep referring to Langley. Who's Langley? Is that a former senator? No.
No, okay. I can tell you, you're talking, in my view, sir. You're talking to the most intelligent audience on the planet. They don't miss a beat, and that's why, of course, the demand that they have that we have you on. So, and of course, we want John too. But yeah, Langley, interesting. Well, go on. I don't need to talk, I guess. Go ahead.
Well, let me just do a little aside on Langley. I know it's a little dreaded topic. It's a bit taboo, and like people I talk to back home, they say, Jim, I'd rather not talk about that. Langley's main business is narcotics. Their profit is approximately $800 billion a year. Their costs are covered by the taxpayers and the federal budget for defense. You got U.S. military guarding the poppy fields in Afghanistan, and all the profits go to the Bush crime family Langley wing, and that it has many, many uses. Let's just talk about a couple of uses that are in the U.S. There's the subsidies for Amazon, cloud storage technology. They use the incredibly lush contract to do predatory pricing and wipe out their competition or seriously reduce their competition. That's the Amazon part. They've got software and other contracts with Google, which allows them to do a number of different things that I'd rather not talk about because I got a Gmail account. They got other things that are involved with Facebook. Facebook did not ever qualify for the S&P according to their criteria. Very simple criteria. I mean, I followed this for 10 years. Okay, we got 2 in and we got 2 out. We got 5 in, we got 5 out for S&P 500 index. And the criteria is simple. Has to have a tangible business and a good 10-year track record. Well, Facebook didn't have either, but they got pushed into the S&P, and it was because they're a globalist entity, which is used for censoring early warning of staged sponsored Langley and Mossad terrorist events like in Brussels and Nice, France in the last 2 years. Well, that's handy. All right, so what you got is Langley infiltrating the U.S. economy, the search engines, various different corporations, and no one really knows about it. They certainly don't talk about it very much because the U.S. public, the 90% that don't listen to your show are kind of dumbed down. I have a pretty simple mathematical type formula. I say 90% are dumbed down. They're just not capable, not interested. Of the 10%, 90% of them really don't want to know. Like my sister, she's smart.
A lot of people like that, yeah.
Yeah. Jim, when I get done with a hard day at work and I'm in court sometimes and I have challenging clients, I just want to go home and relax and play with my cats. I don't want to listen to your stuff. I don't want to learn that there's more corruption in Wall Street. I don't want to learn about problems with the dollar. I don't want to know about doomsday stuff that you're always talking about that never happened. I said, well, there was some doomsday stuff that happened in 2008 and 9, and we went to QE in 2012, which you don't even comprehend, nor do you have interest in knowing. So we don't talk anymore. I haven't talked with my sister in 7 years. I'm persona non grata in my family, and I had a disturbing little conversation today, the details of which I'd rather not go into, with my father. My father's a good guy, retired American literature professor, taught in the university level for almost 30 years, and directed PhDs in literature. But, he's more interested in wearing his World War II cap than learning about the illicit wars in Ukraine, Syria, and Yemen. Not interested.
And Jim,
that's the 90% of the 10% at the top.
Right.
They're not interested. They don't care.
But you're talking about their survival. I mean, knowledge that will help them survive what's coming, what we're going through now.
They're not interested. They're not interested. They're more interested in happiness today. They're actually very invested in the deception of their security and their comfort blanket. They're not interested. You're right. It's their survival. But they're thinking tomorrow is going to be just like today.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and that saddens me. It frightens me a little bit, but I guess it does not surprise me. So, all right.
It's sad. I've actually, done some studies and conversations and analysis of all the different defense mechanisms about the disgusting developments that are happening in our day and age, and refusal to look at the ugliness is a very big part. I don't want to look at that. I want to sleep tonight. I say, well, what if your sleep is based on a deception? I say, you're getting deceived by watching CNN news so regularly. Have you ever thought of how that might rot your brain from all the lies that enter into your cranium and your brain stem? And they say, no, it's maybe a little exaggerated, but that's okay. It's not okay. It's just full of lies. The Russian dossier is demonstrated proof, and I suppose your audience might be even more aware than me, but I just learned a couple of weeks ago or a month ago that CNN had a 50% cut in their viewing audience share.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see them lose their license for sedition propaganda.
Amen.
But instead, they're going to lose their ad revenue, which is just as good. But I don't see any mass resignations. I just saw an assassination of someone who was revealing perhaps some of the unsavory underbelly of U.S. political and elite private practices, which I'd rather not get into, honestly. I'd rather not get into that.
Then let's not. I know.
We got finance economics, and there's plenty on the plate here.
Amen. All right.
Amen.
Hey, by the way, folks, go to goldenjackass.com. Look, in my view, if you are, and I know everyone listening to this, the reason you're listening to this is because you're awake, or you're looking for the truth out there. Well, I'll tell you what, for 6 months, $110, you can't beat it. The Hat Trick Letter. Go to goldenjackass.com, sign up, subscribe for 6 months, $110. You can't beat it. The Hat Trick Letter. It will. Let me tell you, it's going to educate you more than any other economic bulletin newsletter on the planet. And I say that without reservation. The Hat Trick Letter, goldenjackass.com. Jim, continue with your. Go ahead and continue.
And the newsletter reads like a spy novel.
I wasn't going to say that, but yes.
It does.
Yes.
I'm working. I just worked today and finished a chapter on globalists under attack.
Which I love it, and I'm not going to give away, shall we say, the ending, but I love it. Yes.
No, yeah. but let me explain one high level point. A summary point. I don't like the word high level. It sounds like it's arrogant, and you got to be really smart to understand it. No, it's a high level summary point. The globalists are under attack. They're on the run. Many of them have been stripped of their wealth. Many of them have been killed. And they're not in the news ever. The globalists rely on a bunch of generals. I'm speaking military terms. The generals rely on their support from a bigger bunch of captains. You can't get rid of the power on the upper level. I call them the uberlords for the globalists. You can't. I'm talking about people like owners and board members of the Federal Reserve. I wonder how many in your audience can name one.
Good point.
Okay. Okay, Warburg is one. When have you ever seen a picture of Warburg attending a sports event or a car race or a public ceremony? No, they're never in the news. They rely on the generals like Papa Bush, like Wall Street bankers, Jamie Dimon, Lloyd Blankfein. They rely on Soros to carry out all their scummy projects. But those generals rely on captains to execute them, to go out and do the hiring. Like for Black Lives Matter, the NGO group that Soros funded.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a funny joke. All this Black Lives Matter was being circulated, and finally I got a picture in the mail from a client. It said Black Labs Matter, the dog, Labrador. There was a golden lab next to a black lab, and the black lab had a sign around his neck saying Black Labs Matter. Okay, but the point is that the generals rely on the captains to get their job done, to get the projects executed, to get the propaganda out there, to do the bribery, to do the kills. I mean kills of people who get in the way. I had my life threatened twice in 2006.
Really?
Yeah. I had my life threatened twice, and the common denominator was that I spoke of 9/11 as being a demolition elite project in order to put in place the fascist state, execute the fascist manifesto called the Patriot Act, and to bring about a security-based, war-based economy, which is very much aligned with the fascists. And I got threatened 2 different times. Okay, but the point is the generals rely on captains, and the captains are being removed. The captains have been being removed for over 2 years. I'm talking about kills by, say, the white dragons who hire the triad. Now, many people are very aware of the mafia, the Cosa Nostra, out of Sicily, out of Italy, whatever, hired by the Vatican to do clean kills in London. Very clean kills of the bankers in London. That's Vatican. Okay, but there are other ways of removing these elite globalist captains. You arrest one, and this is being done by the white dragons and the triads. People are familiar with the mafia, but they're not familiar very much in the West here, in the United States and elsewhere, with the triad. That's the Hong Kong mafia. And they're vicious, and they're expert, and they were hired by the White Dragon elite family of elders in China to get rid of middle-level globalist elites, the captains. So they arrest one, they capture one, they kidnap one, they extort from one, they get them to flip. They use the fraud division from the Interpol. They get them to flip, and they've been flipping a lot. And there's really not many of them left. So the generals are left a little bit squirming, struggling to find something firm to stand on. I'm referring to Soros and other scum like him. I got a theory, a real simple theory, that we're going to start seeing some of our public figures vanish because they exposed...
what kind of public figures?
Hillary, Obama, Michael LaVaughn Robinson, a.k.a. Michelle Obama. Michael LaVaughn Robinson, 1987 middle linebacker, Oregon State University. Michelle. McCain, they're expendable. What did they do wrong? Why would Hillary and McCain be removed? Why would Obama be removed? They exposed the elites. They exposed the globalists. They left they did things with the Clinton Foundation in ways that were easily monitored and tracked and prosecuted. Now they got publicity. Now you got Podesta. You got McCain with ISIS. You got all these different people. Hillary didn't protect her private server, or was that intentional to allow paid hacking? Pay the Clinton Foundation, $10 million, and have your license to hack the U.S. government highest level security data banks. There's a word for that in the legal lexicon. It's called treason. But there's a different name for it among the globalist elite. It's shining light, exposing the public eye on the globalist activity, which includes, the pedo stuff and extortion and weapons appropriation fraud. We're up to $6.5 trillion now at the Pentagon for missing money. And, I have a very simple approach to some of my analysis. Is anybody looking for the $6.5 trillion missing Pentagon money? No. Therefore, it was done by those in charge. Is anybody looking for the $1.6 trillion that was stolen by Bush and Clinton at the Fannie Mae Treasury pot? No. Therefore, there's pressure by Clinton and Papa Bush not to prosecute, as in attempts to murder Catherine Austin Fitts, who was the auditor of HHS. 3 arsenic attempts. And that's why she stopped talking about finance and economics in the standard, mainstream, main lane. She's now talking about breakaway civilization, underground, cities, networks, space fleets, and it's all very real. But she decided, I'm getting off the main road. I don't want another arsenic attack. I actually talked to her in 2009 by phone. She was a subscriber to the Hat-Trick Letter for a couple of years on Rob Kirby's urging. And I said, Catherine, tell me, this is the second arsenic attempt. How did it happen? She said, well, I'm living in rural Tennessee. I don't have any neighbors for a mile. I got locks on my doors. I said, do you have railings on your windows? She said, no, but they're secure. I got little monitors and things. And she said, I think someone came in and put an injection of arsenic in my carton of milk in the middle of the night. I said, well, I know who would have the ability to do that for the break-in and the technology, turning off your system, your alarm, in 3 a.m. when you're in REM sleep. She said, so do I. They're in Langley. So anyway, I have my own method of staying out of trouble. I try not to mention details of the narcotics. It's pretty simple to say there's $800 billion in narcotics profit, but I don't talk about its shipping routes. I just mentioned that after Turkey took back control of Incirlik and shut it down for narcotics and other NATO activities, all the narcotics went to not Anzio. Oh gosh, what's the name of the Italian NATO base? It's not Anzio.
Second or.
I'm gonna get it real fast here. Italy, NATO. It's kind of like Anzio. Shoot.
It's not this. It's not Saganella. No.
It's got an A in it. It's got an A in it. Okay. Anyway, there's Ramstein in Germany, and the Italian NATO base. Darn, I just can't seem to get it. What is the Italian? Italy NATO base. And Aviano.
Thank you.
Aviano, it's kind of like Anzio, but that's the scene of the World War II battles. Aviano and Ramstein, Germany, are now the principal sites for shipping in the Afghan heroin. Okay, so that's fine, but I leave it alone. What do they do with all this $800 billion a year? All their costs are covered by the U.S. government budgets, military and all. It's amazing. I'd love to have a business where all my costs are covered and I have obscene profits from like a monopoly. Illegal doesn't matter. Monopoly is important. Well, they buy off local politicians. They bribe banking systems. They buy banking systems, but they bribe banking systems to stay loyal to the dollar all the way through the end. And, that has some dire consequences for the countries that do that. But I like to stay out of certain topics, and I'm going to stick more and more to the finance and economics because there's plenty going on. We got some very big things happening right now with the opposition to the dollar. I've talked about the petrodollar monopoly, and I talked about the U.S. Treasury bonds being supported by funny money. But, on the other side of the globe, they got the Eurasian Trade Zone. They got the Belt and Road Initiatives. Are Americans aware that that's $8 trillion in projects that are being done outside the dollar?
8 trillion?
8 trillion. 8 trillion. Belt and Road projects sponsored by the Chinese conference table. It's not government sponsored and funded. No, it's just a table, a forum that is sponsored by the Chinese, so that the Thai leaders and construction firms can get in there and decide on building a big bridge to connect Southeast Asia to Thailand. So a railway can go through Mongolia and Kazakhstan and connect with Eastern Europe. Okay, these are all huge projects. I guessed, this is about 3 months ago, about March or so, I guessed with one of my colleagues, I said, my gosh, I think they're up to about $2 or $2.5 trillion in projects with the Belt and Road Initiatives. He said, Jim, try 6. Well, now it's 8. These are all non-dollar. I mean, all the construction is going to be done and paid in non-dollar. Okay, here is the incredibly powerful initiative, practice, that is now in full swing. It's not just starting out. It's got years behind it. The projects are being funded by treasury bonds from these countries who are dumping them. $8 trillion. And, if I had to hazard a guess, I'd say maybe a quarter of that would be dumped U.S. treasuries. So the Thais in Thailand are going to get a new fancy bridge that enables tremendous expansion in commerce, and it might be constructed and paid for in treasury bonds dumped because they don't want them in their banking system anymore. And no bank in the West will refuse a treasury bond. I just learned of another, that's called indirect exchange, by the way. Third-party usage of treasury bonds to finance something, a project. I just learned from The Voice another practice that's going on by the Russians. They're dumping their treasury bonds, like $46 billion, very recently. Where are they dumping them? Well, Western banks, maybe even some U.S. banks. They're putting them on deposit. It's not really dumping. They're putting them on deposit, and they're borrowing against them to buy gold bullion. So treasury bonds by some of our sanctioned friends are being used to finance the purchase of gold bullion. And our banks can't do a damn thing about it because U.S. Treasury bonds are considered pristine, AAA, the best possible deposit in collateral. The Chinese do the same thing with Wells Fargo. They put big slots of treasury bonds, Wells Fargo in California, borrow 10 times against it, and buy up commercial property in urban United States. We're seeing a phenomenon of dumping and depositing treasury bonds for carpetbag purchase of the United States property and purchase of gold bullion to replace the dollar in the form of treasury bonds in banking systems in the East. This is powerful stuff.
I'd say.
Jim, the globalist the agenda from Brzezinski to Kissinger all wrote about in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the building up of the economies of the East in China and Japan. And it seemed as though they were doing so to damage the United States economy and dollar. And it seems that we've reached that point today. And one of the things that I know we were going to talk about is the final phase of war to defend the dollar. And I want to get into this while we have about 20 minutes left, 15 minutes left. I want to make sure we talk about this. How do you see the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar, being destroyed? Is it by what you're talking about, these countries abandoning the treasury reserves that they have?
They're going to buy oil, they're going to buy grain, they're going to buy soybeans, they're going to buy lumber and cement, and they're not going to use the dollar. I think they're going to use the gold trade note, which will be introduced before too long, and it sits atop the gold, oil, RMB futures contract triangle in Shanghai. The gold trade note will supplant, push aside, remove the usage of the treasury bill as standard payment for commodity purchases. And then eventually, if, say, the Indian tech IT company doing a health project IT installation in the Middle East, if they've got $1 billion multi-year contract, they might also prefer payment in RMB and might like future, forward risk being handled with the gold trade note. I don't know, but the gold trade note is going to be a dismantling device, a lever to break apart the petrodollar. There's something you touched on I'd like to follow up on. The U.S. and West has done a lot of investment outside the United States, and that might have damaged the United States economy, and I fully agree. I remember I was sitting in my office with 3 of my colleagues at Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, in 1984 when Intel announced that they were going to outsource their chip fabrication plants, moving from California to the Pacific Rim. It caused a firestorm of protest until the Rockefeller Institute stepped in, influenced the politicians in order to get total acquiescence, if not full support, for the process of outsourcing U.S. industry to the Pacific Rim, which went on for several years and caused the 1987 Black Monday stock event, which was blamed obviously on different things because they didn't want people to wake up to the fact that outsourcing the U.S. legitimate industry removes legitimate income and caused excessive speculation and financial engineering. The entire financial engineering is a smokescreen for suicide economically. Okay, it didn't stop there. We went on from the 1980s to do emerging market investment, and we had the climax of all, 1999. Hong Kong was turned over to China, and we made a big multi-sided agreement with China. We would do tremendous foreign direct investment into China, even more outsourcing of U.S. industry following the early 90s NAFTA, where we sent a lot of auto and truck fabrication plants to Mexico. So the Chinese accepted something like $23 billion in foreign direct investment in 2002 and 2003 alone. They leased about 5,000 tons of gold to the United States Treasury and Wall Street managers. We reneged on it, but the Chinese had something in mind. I'm getting off the point that we did outsourcing to harm our economy, and now it's gutted of industry. But let me continue with the Chinese tangent there for a minute, because the Chinese distrusted the United States like they distrust the British following the opium episode 100 years ago. So they had a 100-year contract for Hong Kong. They leased us 5,000 tons of gold, and the Chinese did 2 things. They put a mortgage, they put a collateral attachment on the headquarter property complex of J.P. Morgan. We reneged and screwed the Chinese in the return of that leased gold, probably some silver too. We did the renege in 2005, and China announced that they were going to focus their U.S. bond portfolio on treasuries. Read between the lines, and what they were saying in 2005 was that they were going to dump Fannie Mae bonds. did we get a Fannie Mae incident a year or two later? The Chinese precipitated the subprime bond bust. Then in 2010, the Chinese announced, we're going to focus on the short-term treasuries. Read between the lines. They're dumping their long-term bonds. So Bernanke did Operation Twist, sometimes called QE 2.5, 2.5. Okay, fine. But what was Operation Twist? It facilitated the conversion of long-term treasuries into short-term bills on behalf of the Chinese client. They dumped their Fannie Mae, and then they dumped their long-term treasuries, and now they're letting them expire while they spend them, like on the Holy Grail contract for pipelines with Russia, which is 90% completed on their pipeline array. And what are the Russians accepting for the piped crude oil to China? They're accepting RMB. And they're taking the RMB currency, they're going to Shanghai, and they're converting a portion to gold, while they're depositing treasury bonds in Western banks, taking out loans, and using that to buy gold. So the United States Treasury bonds built the Russian-Chinese pipeline, paid for it. This is a mess. My point in '84, I said this to my buddies. They said, Jim, what do you make of this? A couple of them looked up to me. A couple were my peers. And I said, we're removing legitimate income. If this continues, just, fast forward 20 years, we're going to have a severe crisis. We're going to lose legitimate income, and we're going to rely on what? Financial engineering? Stock speculation? Unemployed are going to have stock accounts? That's exactly what happened. We had the 2000 tech telecom bust. So outsourcing was economic suicide. Man. QE bond purchase is financial suicide. The United States has now committed economic suicide with outsourcing and financial suicide with unsterilized bond monetization. So we're an envy of the world, huh?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, it sounds so bad when you say it, Jim.
That's because I put details on it to make it sound non-trivial.
That's true. And folks, I would urge everyone, look, this is just a sliver, a taste. If you really want the truth and want to know what's going on, go to goldenjackass.com and subscribe to the Hat Trick letter. I mean, you will not find better information than there. It's tremendously inexpensive. 6 months for $110. You can't beat it. Again, goldenjackass.com, Hat Trick letter, subscribe 6 months, $110. I highly recommend this if you really want to know what the backstory is, what the futures are, what the front story is. Jim Willie's an amazing guy. You just got a taste of him right there. Continue, sir. I didn't mean to interrupt, but wow, this is amazing stuff.
China is now our adversary.
Yeah.
They want respect. They don't want control. I mean, there's very different attitudes and methods. The United States goes into an area and they say, well, we want to control this. We want to control your resources. We want to control your banks. We want you to abide by our rules, and if you get out of the way, we'll assassinate your leaders. And we'll put in new leaders because we'll have ground systems, NGOs that Langley and other people, other agencies like Soros will pay for, and we'll get the leaders we want. Case in point, Brazil. We'll down your aircraft with your political candidates that we don't like, and it'll all be called an accident. Okay, that's what the United States does. They go in there, try to strong arm, and the emphasis is not in building the economy. The emphasis is on selling weapons and controlling the financial structure. The Chinese go in with a different approach. They say, we want to build up your economy, have some jobs created for your people, get you out of poverty. We're not looking to control everything, but if you want to use our RMB for stability purposes in the banks, that's all well and good. Let's build a port facility. Let's build some railroads. Let's build some hospitals and schools. Let's get your country out of the third world and climb into the second and a half world. They don't go to the second world. They go to the second and a half world. It has elements of third, but also, the look of second. And the Chinese say, we're going to build up your economy. We're going to bring prosperity. That's not the U.S. way. That's not anymore. Since 85, it's just not the U.S. way. And the Chinese are now colonizing Africa. They did something in Costa Rica here. I don't like talking about my home country much, except this pertains to sport. In 2010 and 11, I would go down every Sunday morning on my bike. It was a nice 4-mile trip on the bike, and then the ride back was all uphill, so it was a good workout, 4 miles in, 4 miles out. And I arrived home sweaty, had my orange juice, had my lunch, took a nap, whatever, had a shower. But my destination for those 2 years was the stadium that China built, Costa Rica. It's called the Estadio Nacional. It's a national soccer stadium, national football stadium. It's got loads of events. It's got 20, 30 different soccer games per year, maybe 50. They got regional soccer game, but they also got concerts and funny thing happened. Shakira is just a gorgeous Latina singer. She's only about 5'1". She's extremely intelligent, but she did something dumb when she came to the Estadio Nacional for her concert. She wore a ring, a diamond ring, and it was worth, I'm told, like $10,000, $15,000. And she was shaking hands with the public, and someone just pulled it right off her finger. Okay, so the point is the Chinese made a deal. We will build you a stadium, and that'll be your national icon. It'll draw people. It'll draw clients. It'll draw lots of teams and lots of spectators. It'll improve your economy. And we will do it for free. And we will have 200 prisoners do it. And they will be on like a chain gang, short leash. But if they fulfill their duty for the 2 years to build the stadium, they get Costa Rican citizenship and they can intermarry. And Costa Rica said, signed, done deal. They've done other things to bring in Chinese population, but they planted the seed. The United States comes in and says, we want to control your banking system, your airports, and your security, and we want to move narcotics through your country. Huh. Very different approaches. I will not go into more details than that. Very different approaches. So Africa is converting. There are 2 or 3 nations now that are moving toward the RMB Chinese currency as their reserve for banking. Kenya and Angola. Angola is it's an unusual little story. Angola is receiving foreign loans to keep their country going because they got less revenue from crude oil after the drop in price. Angola is a major OPEC exporter. So they accepted Chinese funds to run Angola's government and economy. Can you guess what form the funds arrived in to help Angola?
Oh, do tell.
U.S. Treasuries.
Why am I not surprised?
And the return is made to China in the form of RMB. They're selling their oil in RMB. China is one of the customers, not the only one. Okay, in Kenya, you got a different kind of story, but it rhymes. There are a couple other countries that are now in the process. I think Tanzania is one. Zimbabwe is one. They're converting to an RMB reserve system in their banks. What does that mean? It means the assets in their banks are Chinese currency and bonds. The reserve currency for the banking system serving as asset foundation base. Okay. The Russians have dumped all theirs. They don't have any treasuries left. They're all on deposit, used for collateral, whatever. The The whole East is getting out of the dollar. Okay, this is a death knell. I like to say that the gold trade note is the dagger in the petrodollar's heart, but the Chinese gold, oil, RMB contracts are the death knell. It's just a matter of time. Wait till you see the gold trade note. It's going to be introduced, I think, this year. It's going to be a surprise how widely adopted it will be, because a simple reason. Countries around the world do not like all the restricted rules that the U.S. government puts out for using the dollar. So if they don't use the dollar and instead use the gold trade note and the RMB, they're outside the rules and regulations for the dollar and Washington neocon fascists. This is going to be a parade.
You did a great interview with Tia Ferguson on the gold trade note. I believe it was in May, and it's just fantastic. But Jim, we only have a couple minutes left, man. We could talk to you for another 6 days and not even scratch the surface. In the few minutes we've got left, my brother, your final closing thoughts. I'm going to turn it over to you.
We're going to see a contagion occur with breakdown events. They've already started. They're not going to get better and go away. They're going to get worse and intensify. We have 2 points right now where contagion is beginning, and that's Deutsche Bank failure. They're the largest bank in all of Europe. They're the biggest German bank. They're the flagship German bank. But they're also the derivative complex management office that Wall Street outsourced to get away from regulators. They did some audits in the last year or two, and they were absolutely aghast and shocked at some of the rubbish, rot, and ruin, toxic paper that is sitting in Deutsche Bank. They got 8 different businesses, and if you think they can rescue 2 or 3, you're wrong. All 8 are rotten. The Arabs invested, in particular the Qataris. Okay, at the same time, the Italian banking system is fracturing. They've got a sovereign, Minibot. They call it Minibot, M-I-N-I-BOT. It's a sovereign special currency that's being used to handle Italian debt and interbank payments. And I think it's the precursor for the return of the lira. Okay, when Italy goes bad, and it is going bad, it's not might go bad, it is going bad. It's fracturing. Bank runs, cocoa bonds going to zero, bond haircuts for bondholders. When Italy goes bad, the victim will not be so much Germany, it will be France. They've got 4 times as much debt exposure to Italy compared to Germany. So France is not even in the news with respect to Italy. Okay, that's going to cause a chain reaction of big banks in the West. But we've got other problems that are going to ricochet from the fractures. And the sad part is they've got 10 locations. They got 20 locations. It's Turkey. It's Saudi Arabia. It's Venezuela. It's Mexico. Mexico is on the verge of a currency crisis right now. I got a client who's in Mexico and keeps abreast on all the events that are going on politically, keeps me well informed. They got a socialist guy now who's likely to win the election, and the currency market is already telling us, yeah, that socialist wrecking ball is going to win. So when I was in Cancun last 2012, anyway, I was last there, and it was about a 12 or 13 to 1 currency exchange rate. Now it's 20 and a half. 50% decline. That means all American products cost 50% more to Mexicans. And Trump is trying to bring back the auto and truck industry. So they don't like him. Oh, my gosh. Numerous points of failure. That's what's happening with the Deutsche Bank and Italian banking system. TNT fuse. Not about to be lit. Already lit. I'm looking at the Eurasian trade zone and the continued process with numerous projects. They got a new project announced just about every 3 or 4 days. A multi-billion-dollar project every 3 or 4 days. Non-dollar. Okay, this is how the dollar loses its monopoly. This is how other nations say we don't want to trade in the dollar anymore. And if they don't trade in the dollar, they're not going to bank in the dollar for their reserves. It's all connected. Very exciting times, but the contagion is going to render some very significant harm to the United States because we're going to lose our global currency reserve, and it's going to be a long process. It's not going to be an overnight event. But I might be wrong on that. I got a couple, colleagues who say, Jim, I think Trump has got a plan to pay off the debt, to source the gold for a new dollar, and to move on. And I say, well, he hasn't done anything about the $600 billion trade deficit.
That's
and
fair.
If we have a gold-backed dollar, the first year we will lose 13,000 tons of gold at a $1,300 price. So we're not going to.
That's not okay.
We're not gonna do it.
Ain't happening.
I want to thank you so much for joining us. We kind of overshot our end of the segment time, but it's been a pleasure, and we'd love to have you back on to continue this conversation, and we so do appreciate your time.
Call me anytime. It's a pleasure.
All right. Jim Willie, thank you so very much for your gracious gift of time. Jim Willie, goldenjackass.com, the man behind the hat trick letter, the best $110 you'll ever spend, 6-month subscription. You'll learn more in one issue than 10 issues of anything else. Again, Mr. Willie, thank you so very much. May God bless you and keep you safe, brother. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thanks. Bye now.